Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good day. My name's Andy. My channel's Finding Value. I'm going to answer some questions here, some comments that you guys wanted some feedback on. It says, I'm currently working on an engineering degree. Was wondering what your thoughts are on it as a career. And I'm gonna give you some thoughts here. I am an engineer as well. I have a degree in manufacturing engineering. I went to California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo, California. I grew up in Minnesota. That's where I went to school. I played a lot of sports. I've done a lot of things sports related when I was growing up. When I grew up, what my interests were, and this is important to the question because you're asking about engineering, and whatever major and career that you guys choose, in my opinion, you have to be interested in it. My interests when I was a very young kid, just looking back and guys, I'm just throwing stuff out here, and you can listen and make your own decisions on what you think is right and wrong. And this is one opinion; it's just my opinion. I growing up, I did lots of sports. I was very active physically. I was outside all the time. I did things that progressed me to where I wanted to go. So I liked riding motorcycles. I liked riding mountain bikes. I would tear them apart. I would put them back together. I would literally do this with just one diagram, and I could rebuild the shocks on the motorcycle off of one diagram. And all they had was an exploded view of a front shock, and it'd be like a seal and whatever else is in there, and I would literally take it all apart and put it back together and rebuild it with new seals, and put the fork oil in and all that stuff. So I was somewhat interested in the assembly of the disassembly and assembly of mountain bikes, dirt bikes, cars, stuff like that when I was growing up. And I always liked being outside. I also would work out all the time. I would run, I would work out, I would mountain bike. I was basically someone who was very active. So, in my opinion, if you were to look backwards at the things that you naturally want to do in life, those are the things that I would try to do as a career. Somehow where you could get whatever you naturally want to do as a person and integrate that into a career. Some of it, not all of it, but if you can integrate a lot of what you really naturally like. If you wake up in the day and you go on a walk and you're outside, well, maybe something that you could integrate something outside with. Or maybe if you're constantly working out and doing things and are health minded, maybe you want to go into something with diets. Maybe you want to go into something that deals with health. Maybe it's something that you want to do where you can combine health and being outside. Maybe you're a guide or a tour or something where you can do vacations, something like that, where you're outside showing people how to do things, whatever it is. Wherever you can integrate the things that you naturally did as a young person that you just chose to do naturally, you wake up and you do it, integrate that into your career, you're going to be far happier. Now, engineering, the reason I went into engineering, I'm just wanted to give you my background on me and probably what I would have done, maybe a little bit differently or not. I was incredibly good at math, and I was also good at science. I was not so good at the English, social studies, those types of things. The reason I think I wasn't as good is because what they taught wasn't necessarily correct. I would shoot holes through it. And in math, you can get answers and there's a right or wrong answer. So there's a truth there's an undeniable truth to seek in math and science and whatever. You can replicate it, you can seek it, you can get there different ways. You still have an answer that's right or wrong. In other subjects, they were more subject to an opinion. And I did not like that. In fact, I hated it. I despised it. And I would write things and people would say, your writing's not, they would give me all these reasons of something that I couldn't really justifiably like hang on to and say like this is right or this is wrong. they would just give an opinion, and it's like, well, your opinion doesn't match the other opinion, and this opinion doesn't match this other person's opinion of different teachers. Or they didn't like what I wrote, and they didn't like my opinion on what I wrote, because there was some things that I would write that were arguably, on the fringe of maybe attacking people's things. Like I would test the boundaries of what I consider to be thought. So there would be things that I would write about that were on the fringes, I'll say. Nothing bad, just thought provoking. And they told me when I was doing very well in math, I would consider myself, I took like honors and AP and all this stuff. I took all the best math and science you could potentially take. I even took honors like social studies and all this other stuff. I just wasn't as interested in it. So I got very good grades. I was probably like top 4 of all the classes. Every single math class I took, I was in the top 4. So I was either number 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I was basically battling out against a couple of people that I know in the class. Some of them ended up being doctors and stuff like that. But we would battle back and forth. And inherently, it was just, I didn't say math was fun. I just could do it. And they said, you should become an engineer. My dad was like, yeah, be an engineer. And I didn't necessarily like math because I didn't do any of this like outside of school. I just did it in school because it was something that I could get the answer. And it was very easy. It was like, they'd be like, here, solve this equation. It's like, oh, that's easy. You gave me the equation. And you just go through it and you solve it and you get an answer. And you just build and build and build like a sequential model. It's just boom, 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 boom. And you keep building out off of a base of learning it. So it was easy to kind of go into it, but I didn't necessarily love math. I just did it because I was good at it. There was nothing in my childhood that would say that, Andy loves math. He just did it because he was good at it. So I went into a career engineering, and I mean, obviously there's a lot of demand for engineers and a lot of, how can I say this? Like engineering degrees are like the only thing worth getting if you're going to go to school, in my opinion. The other stuff you can really learn on your own, because what you're learning in engineering is you're just learning basically how to think. But the problem I had is, I mean, it is a lot of math. That's all you do. It's just math, 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 math. I was going through these classes, and a lot of the classes you'll have what you think isn't going to be a lot of math, but it ends up being all math. So I'd have statistics for engineers. And then we'd have engineering economics, which, I mean, you'd be like, yeah, statistics, that's math. Engineering economics, okay. And then you went into linear regression analysis, quality control, which is all math. You'd go into your physics type stuff. So you have physics 1, 2, and 3, which is a full year of physics, all math. You'd go into chemistry 1, chemistry 2, which is all math. And then you go into, obviously, your math classes, which is about a little over a year worth of math. You'd have Calc 1, 2, 3, and there's like a fourth, like differential equations. You might have math topics. You'd go into all that stuff. Then you would go into your engineering classes. It's all math. It's all freaking math, all of it. It's engineering dynamics, engineering statics. You'd go into thermodynamics, heat transfer, on and on and on and on. All math. So you're going through all this stuff and you're like, man, I get it. Like, I'm good at math, but I'm literally doing like 3 math classes all in a row all the time. Math, 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 math. But I mean, even like materials, strength of materials, civil engineering classes, it's all math. So you go through that and you basically discover, I thought it was quite difficult. I didn't think it was very easy. You're competing against kids who are math majors, who are chemistry majors and physics majors in physics, in chemistry, and in math. This isn't like you're going into business and they've got like in a separate class and they call it like business math, where like they put the people who aren't nearly as good at math so they can't compete. It's my opinion. And you really start to go against people who are, I would say, very bright people. So you've got you're on the higher end of the IQ group battling it out against each other. So it doesn't mean, obviously what school you go to and their and how strict they are on their admissions is going to determine how easy or hard the classes will be, because that's your competition, and they're going to have to split that competition up into A, B, C's, and D's. So I found it to be pretty hard because if you go to a more competitive school who lets in very smart people, you're competing against smart people in what they like to do. And obviously when I got out, I thought the career was absolutely a joke. Like, it's easy as heck. I thought school was incredibly difficult because I was in an environment where there was a lot of very smart people. I didn't know that at the time. I thought people were just inherently that smart. And I came out way better prepared than what I thought. And obviously you're still going to learn things. And obviously you're going to have to adapt and adjust to whatever environment and conditions and culture that is ahead. But I didn't realize how much I knew coming out. All of that math and science and all of the things. And I did a pretty good job at, my grades were pretty good. They weren't like excellent, but I did try very hard to get pretty good grades. And I don't think that the grades necessarily define, the person, but it is a somewhat of an indication of how well you did and what you learned and kind of the retention of it. Grades, that is. But you will find a job if you have an engineering degree. But what you'll realize after you start working is it's not necessarily how good you are at your job and what you know and what you've learned in school. It's more about who you know. And it's more about the opportunities that you seek when you are young. And what I mean by that is it's about going into sectors that are very good. And that's touching on another, I think, person's thing, is what sectors are good. Since I know a lot of engineers, I know a lot of people who graduated. I am a manager at a large aerospace company. I don't want to name the company. You get to figure out kind of the inner workings of these companies. These companies are not efficient. They are very inefficient. They are very soul-sucking to some extent. Yes, you can make a lot of money. What is a lot of money? You can make between $100,000 and $200,000 a year. That's what I consider to be a good amount. But I still think that engineers are undervalued because really in a company, there's value creation, and then there's a bunch of people that just ride off the value creators. The value creation or the value creators in most companies are the people who are designing the products, because that's where the value is created, is in the drawings and the designs. The drawings and designs are what make a company successful or not. And it hinges based off of those designs. And if you can get very good designers and you can get people to lead those designers, those are what make or break the company. And I'm seeing a lot of companies with pretty poor designs. And what designs do is they force a company. If you have a really good design, it impacts your manufacturing. If your design is very easy to put together, it's very intuitive. They designed out a lot of, we call it poka-yoke. Poka-yoke is a way that you can foolproof the design. It only goes together one way. And if you do it very easily, you minimize the number of fasteners, you minimize the different types of fasteners. What you're doing is you're literally creating a lean design for lean manufacturing. It's tying this all together. And I know it's a little bit off topic here, but when you look at this stuff and you get very good designs, not only could they be of good quality for the use in the field, you can also manufacture them quite easily. And there's a few companies that have, I think, mastered that. Toyota, Porsche is doing very well. There's companies out there that are really taking this to the nth degree, so to speak, and doing lean manufacturing, which ultimately more or less is a lean design. It's a design that you can scale in manufacturing because of its ease of putting it together. But engineering is a great field. You just have to be interested in it. If you're not interested in it, I would definitely not recommend it, because you have to be you have to set your mind like you are going to go through a lot of math, and if it's a very good school, you're going to be competing against very smart people, and it's not easy. If you know that you're on the fringe of math, then I probably wouldn't do it, because I went through it. I think my GPA was probably, I think it was overall 3.3, and my best grades were obviously in my major, which were all manufacturing type stuff. But I would say there were some difficult classes there, and it highly depends on how the material is presented to you. And I'll go into another clip on how you would pick a school, perhaps, because picking the school, I think, is very important. And I'll give you my opinions there if you guys want that. But engineering is a great field if you have interest in it. If you don't have interest in it, then I wouldn't do it. Now, there's different engineering degrees that you can get. I am a very hands-on person. Manufacturing, industrial manufacturing is where I would be. That's more of a hands-on thing. Mechanical engineering is also another kind of hands-on. If you guys like more like chemical type stuff, I don't know as much about chemical. I had very good grades in chemistry. I was probably like one of the top, even in college. Like I was a top performer. I think I even got the highest grade in a few of the classes of a few hundred people. My interests aren't there. I can do it, but I just don't. I don't necessarily like to do it. I understand the concepts. I like doing that stuff. I don't know. My interests aren't there, but I'm sure you could do chemical engineering very easily and make a ton of money. I guarantee, if you go to a decent school, and your schooling, like picking your schools. I'll go into that in another clip. But other ones, mechanical engineering's pretty much you can work anywhere. It's pretty much the baseline. Electrical engineering, I think, is going to be incredibly high demand. Everything is moving towards using electricity and converting that energy to a whatever, that power source into something else, whether it's motion or whatever. I think that's probably a very good spot. Doing electronics, definitely. So I think that's in high demand sector. And, I don't know of too many other ones. I'm just trying to think. There's aerospace engineering. I'm in aerospace. There's always demand for that. And you can do that with many different things. You could work in aerospace itself. You could work in cars because they're getting a lot more aerodynamic. There's a whole bunch of things that you could go into with that. But my favorite was manufacturing because I'm a hands-on person. I ripped apart motorcycles. I ripped apart mountain bikes and put them back together when I was a kid. And that most closely represented what I liked doing. I do not like electrical engineering. I do not like chemical engineering. I am a hands-on type person. I like seeing things go together and being taken apart. So I do think that's kind of fun. I like continuous improvement type things. I could also be a continuous improvement specialist or a lean engineer where I'm leaning out processes. I also work with floor layouts, setting up equipment, buying equipment, doing capital appropriation things, and can't say I'm that interested in doing those types of things, but I can do it quite easily, and I've done a whole bunch. And I've transferred production lines from one facility to another facility, training people and all that stuff. I've done all of that stuff. So engineering is good, but I still think that they're underpaid because they're basically creating the value for the company. You could be a buyer that literally is so much easier, but it's just more of a headache, I will say, because some of these supply chains are quite they're not vertically integrated. These companies, vertically integrated means that the companies they make everything. What happens is they become assembly areas where all they do is assembly, and they purchase everything from outside suppliers. And now it just becomes one large headache of planning and getting things in the building. And if you're running the production or own the production lines, it becomes a headache because your inputs to your process are sometimes short, they're bad in quality, etc., etc. And it seems like when people want to fix things, they want to focus on the actual process, maybe not necessarily the suppliers, and becoming, we'll call it having their core competency be supplier development. Because if you're buying 80% or 90% of your things to make and come into an assembly, your core competency better be on developing those suppliers. So engineering is good, but you're subject to external forces, which can also be quite frustrating sometimes. And depending on the companies and where you work, I've worked at a few companies and different sites and whatnot. It can be a little bit frustrating because you're the one adding the value. They want to get this stuff done quickly, and sometimes it's hard to create a design and make it a reality, an idea to reality. It's probably one of the toughest things to do. And some of these business people, they don't understand that. So it's a lot harder. And you're getting people who, I mean, obviously this is all my opinion. The business type people are not as smart. They don't have it. So you've got people telling you who aren't as smart that you got to get this stuff done. You got to get it done. It's not that hard. And it's like, yeah, it is. You go try to do this. You try to figure this stuff out. So there's things that can get a little bit, how can I say it, frustrating. I would say engineers are probably the most undervalued of any of the groups. And if you're looking to progress forward, it's not about your skill set. It's not about gaining whatever. It's about the people you know. And usually how you get that access to the connections that can be made for people knowing is you go into leadership programs. So if they have a leadership program at your company, go into it. Going through that leadership development program is more important because of the connections you make than, say, a master's degree or even a doctorate degree, because you're going to progress up into management, if that's what you want to do, much more quickly, because you know people and they're going to actively be looking after you and your career development to push you forward. Otherwise, you're just another person that was hired on, and most likely you're not going to progress through the company nearly as quickly. And I can go through all this stuff if this is stuff that you guys want to learn. Put it in the comment section if this is stuff you want to know. I also know quite a bit of engineers. I can get them and we can do interviews, and I can get you all of our opinions on it and kind of what you guys want to know and figure out, because obviously my idea has changed quite dramatically from being a student, an engineering student, versus today. And it changes with your life as well as you get older. Your priorities change, your vision of your life changes, and things won't be the same. So I'll go into all that stuff in other clips here, but I'll start you with this clip here. Let me know if you guys like it. Put in the comments section if you guys like more of these videos. I can pump these things out. I've got almost 20 years of experience doing this stuff. A little bit less than 20 years. So I can talk all about it in my experiences. Doesn't mean that's going to match someone else's. But yeah, having an engineering degree sets you up pretty good for the future. It's just, you're going to be competing against some pretty smart people if you go to a pretty good school. If you guys like this content, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And thank you for listening. This is Finding Value.